All right, so welcome to a slightly different kind of a worksheet. So what I'm doing this week, for those of you who I haven't taught yet in class, I am going to do the translations for the two worksheets in one video. That's going to be today's video. So we'll go over the translation sections at the bottom of 30 and the bottom of 31. And tomorrow's video will be just the synopses from 30 and 31. So instead of doing one video per worksheet, I'm kind of doing all the translations together in one video and all the synopses together in the other video, just so you know you're in the right place. Okay? So when we are looking at a translation, we always want to be thinking grammar, grammar, grammar. Okay, the vocabulary is obviously important, but you have to know what to do with it. So when we're reading a sentence, we want to be labeling, we want to be getting some, mental stuff out there. My apologies for a little bit of noise from behind my apartment right now. So we start with the fact that Jupiter is the loudest it's been, of course, when I start recording. Jupiter's in the nominative case. Okay. Alkmenam is in the accusative, and amabat is my verb, third singular, imperfect. There we go. We then have the second part of the sentence after said, Alkmena in the nominative, Fidelis in the nominative, Uxor in the nominative, and Amphitryonis is in the genitive. Now, how would we know these things? Well, if it's new vocabulary, what do? We look it up. And there's nothing wrong with looking up new vocabulary, especially if they're names that we're not familiar with. So we've got Jupiter, Jupiter, right? He's our subject. Amabat, loved. Was loving is okay, but we're telling a story. Was loving just kind of sounds a little weird. Loved Alkmena. She is a new character, right? If you're unfamiliar with the story of Hercules, she is Hercules' mother. Okay, a little spoiler alert as to where this story is going. Jupiter loved Alkmena, but Alkmena, she is our nominative in the second part, Alkmena, Fidelis uxor amphitryonis erat. So we have a nominative, a genitive, and then we have our verb. And since our verb is erat just means was, right? Alkmena was the faithful wife of Amphitryon. So these are some new characters for us to meet. Alkmena, Amphitryon. We're going to learn more about them as we read through our stories for the next couple weeks. Jupiter loved Alkmena, but Alkmena was the faithful wife of Amphitryon. She was Amphitryon's faithful wife. So we have a third declension adjective in there, fidelis. That's one of our new words. Uxor might be a new word for you as well. Uxor, uxoris. That's a wife. The second chunk here, deus. He's in the nominative case. Igitor, when you look it up, don't be confused. Sometimes you see like a tor on the end. Maybe you're thinking verb. Igitor is actually just an adverb. It means therefore. Right? Hey, Jaden. So therefore, deus in the nominative, speciem in the accusative, amphitryonis in the genitive case, and then we get our verb ad sumpsit. The principal parts of this verb, ad summo, ad sumere, ad sumpsi. So because it's the third principal part, it is perfect active. Et domum in the accusative, eius in the genitive, intravit, another third singular, perfect active, right? So a lot of new vocabulary. Deus is a god. Species is the appearance. There's our boy Amphitryon again. And the verb ad sumo literally means to assume, as in to take on. Domum's a house, right? A domus. Eius is a word we're going to learn about a little bit more. Eius means his or hers, right? And then our verb here at the end, intravit. To intrare is to enter. Entrar. So our translation, we always want to make it a good English sentence. So subject comes first, verb, everything else. Okay? So the deus, the god, aka Jupiter, therefore, we could put the therefore at the beginning, actually. Sounds a little bit better. Therefore, the god Adsumsit took on the speciem, the direct object, took on the appearance of Amphitryon, took on Amphitrion's appearance, and because it's domum, right, we don't want to just jump right to that next word, it's the direct object, intrawit, entered his house. So the god took on Amphitryon's appearance, the appearance of Amphitryon, the look of Amphitryon, and intrawit, and entered his house. Laita, she's now described, Alcmena, the happy Alcmena. Conjugem, that's definitely a new word for you, but doesn't matter. It's in the accusative case. We'll figure out what it means after. And then we get another third singular perfect verb here, salutavit. Saluto is to greet, right? To say salve. That's where saluto comes from, salve. Jaden, while I'm doing the rest of the labeling here, if you want to throw a translation in the chat, feel free. Illa nocta, that's in the ablative case. Illa nocta. You know it, Dante. Alcmena. Eoe. E is our preposition, not and in Italian. Eoe, which is in the ablative case. Gravida. Facta est. We get our first two-word verb form here. This is third singular perfect passive. So we got kind of two sentences here. Laeta alcmena conjugem salutavit. And then we have the second half here. So we could say happy Alcmena, the happy Alcmena, salutavit, right? We go to our verb next, greeted a conjunx, literally the one you've been joined to is a spouse, right? So happy Alcmena greeted her husband, or at least the man that she thought was her husband. Illa nocte, in the ablative case, that night, so that's our time, right? When is this happening? That night, Alcmena, facta est, from facio, to make, so it's in the passive, perfect passive. Literally, Alcmena has been made. We could just say was made. Was made gravida. If you know what gravity is, right? Heavy. Alcmena was made heavy from Jupiter. Now that's the literal translation. What that means, gravida, to be heavy for a person, is to be pregnant. So Alcmena was made pregnant. We probably wouldn't say in English was made pregnant from him. We would probably say was made pregnant by him, by Jupiter. She was made pregnant. You could also say she became pregnant. This is where you take the literal words from your translation and you make sure, hey, is this how we actually say it in English? And most of the time you need to kind of massage it a little bit. But the general idea here is that Alcmena was made, gravida, pregnant, because of Jupiter, by Jupiter. Not the planet, the god. Happy Alcmena, we could say something like Alcmena, who was happy, greeted her husband. You could also do something like, you could say like happily greeted. Yeah, I see you in there, Dante. When you have these adjectives in Latin, sometimes they don't sound great as adjectives in English, so you kind of massage it a little bit. The happy Alcmena is the most literal translation. That happy Alcmena over there, that happy lady, greeted her husband. But again, when you're dealing with different languages, sometimes things don't sound great when you keep them exactly the same. So with practice, we will learn to massage our translations a little bit. Mox, new word for us, soon. Amphitryon, there he is in the nominative. Amphitryon, that word ipsa means himself, right? So when you look it up, it's going to say ipsa ipsa ipsum, but it's in the nominative case, Amphitryon himself, aka the real Amphitryon. Domum in the accusative, advenit. I think most of the verbs in this story are in the perfect, so we can be on the lookout for those. Soon, and I'll let you work on that. Suskenseba, so we have another verb that's imperfect. Quad, because. Uxor, I'll make this a little bit smaller. It's always nice to kind of break. If you get like a break like an et or something like that, you can kind of take a little breather in the sentence. Eum is in the accusative, and then non salutavit, another third singular. Soon Amphitryon himself arrived at the house, right? And there's another situation, right? It's a great translation. Soon Amphitryon himself arrived at the house. Yep, we would say that. Arrived at the house. Soon he came home. Right? Where you take the actual literal translation, make sure it sounds like English. Right? Soon Amphitryon came home. Et kun suskenseba. Suskenseo has the same. That's right. Has the same root as like incense. Right? Incense is to burn. Right? Incense is the thing that you burn. Incendo in Latin means to burn. Suskenseo would be like a burning underneath. So this is the verb to be angry or to become angry. You're literally on fire, right? Under your skin, you're kind of bubbling and boiling. So he was angry because, and why was he angry? Uxor eum non salutavit. He was angry because his uxor, alcmena, non salutavit eum. He was angry because his wife, non salutavit, same verb that we had up here, salutavit, his wife didn't greet him. Did not greet him. Why did she not greet him? Because remember last night? You came home, right? And we had fun, and now what? So we're going to see, obviously, somebody's going to realize that shenanigans are afoot. Alcmena respondit, third singular, perfect active. Said to, but you, hesterna nocta. Hesterna means yesterday, or in this case, last. Because it wouldn't have made for as good of a story. That's always my explanation when it comes to mythology. Why did the story happen the way it did? Because the story happened the way that it did. Advenisti is our isti form, right? That's our second person singular. Tumte salutavi. First singular, perfect. So we get a couple first and second persons in there too. So Alcmena responded. Alcmena responded. Right, past tense. Said, but do you, you returned last night. You came home last night. Tum means then, right? I greeted you then. Right? So he's saying, I came home, no greeting at the door, no happy to see you, And her response is, but that was last night. You got home last night. And that's when I greeted you. So, of course. So now we're starting to piece it together. Amphitryon, rogawit, rogare is to ask. So Amphitryon asked, third singular, perfect. Quomodo, how, adverb? Quomodo, adverb? I think so. How Harry advenire, so we have our first infinitive in the story, and we have an infinitive because what does poteram mean? First singular, imperfect. Remember possum. Quoniam, that's a conjunction. That's like because or since. Harry, yesterday. Yeah, able to. Magnum bellum, that's our direct object. And then we have, how can I do this? Bellum, and I'm just going to make this sentence a little bit smaller. Actually, I'll just do this. Formatting. There we go. And our last verb here is first person singular, imperfect. Excellent, Jaden. So he's saying, and I'll just bump the whole thing down to a new line. He's saying, or Amphitryon asked. Oops. He asked, Quomodo, how? Poteram, how was I able? Advenire, to come home yesterday. Since yesterday, magnum bellum gerebam. What was he doing yesterday? How could I have come home yesterday? How was I able to come home yesterday? Since yesterday, what? Big war, right? That's the direct object, though. So we need to start with our verb here. Gerebam. I was doing what? What does it mean to gero a bellum? I was fighting. Yeah. I was fighting a big war. So clearly we have a situation. Our next line here, alkmenam. She's in the nominative case. Fidem in the accusative. Ei, this little word, kind of tricky. It's in the dative. We're going to talk about that little word. In these mythological stories, oftentimes, yeah, especially with Jupiter, because you need an excuse for the woman to be home by herself. So, always a convenient plot device. Amphitryon was fighting against Taphian pirates who had stolen his brother's cattle. There you go. But of course, since this is basic Latin, we're going to just say he was fighting a war. Or maybe it was his uncle. And then, adverb, and then Amphitryon, Wainiam, Uxori, and then our verb here is dative. So we have a couple of expressions here. And this is where translation gets a little tricky, because when you look these words up individually, sometimes it doesn't quite sound right. So Alcmena here, of course, she's our subject. Fidem, your fides is your faith. Ei is him, right? And then juravit is to swear. Jurare is to make an oath, to swear. So when you look at this literally, it says that Alcmena swore faith to him. So the idea here is that Alcmena, I'm going to put the literal translation, swore faith to him. But yeah, the idea, she swore she was faithful to him, right? Swore she was faithful to him. So this is a massage moment, right? Where you're like, swear faith to someone. We don't really do that in English. That's the idea. And then at deinda, Amphitryon gave dodare dedi mercy or forgiveness to his wife. And then Amphitryon gave forgiveness to his wife. But again, we don't say it like that in English, so what's a better translation? Instead of he gave forgiveness to his wife, what would we say? He forgave her. So this is going to happen when you are reading real stuff, where you have to deal with these expressions, right? And it happens in all languages. No two languages are the same when it comes to all of these different expressions. And so a literal translation that's kind of okay is kind of okay, right? She swore faith to him. It's all right, but I'd rather you say what we would say. And especially something like, oh, he gave forgiveness to his wife. Yeah, I know what you mean, but there's a more English way to say that. And clearly, there was forgiveness, because then, in true mythological fashion, then Alcmena non eioe sed e Amphitrione etiam gravida facta est. So there was forgiveness, because what happened then? Alcmena facta est gravida e Amphitrione etiam. Yeah, then Alcmena was made pregnant by Amphitryon. And what does etiam mean? She was made pregnant by Amphitryon also. Or you could say she was also made pregnant by Amphitryon. And the first thing you're going to ask me at this point is, how? In which case I'm going to go back to my explanation of mythology, which is just go with it. It's myth. It's a story. So the idea here is that Alcmena is now pregnant with 2 children, one fathered by Jupiter and the other fathered by her husband Amphitryon. And so these twins, and this is the part that Disney leaves out, are Hercules, the one whose parent is Jupiter, and Hercules' twin brother Iphicles. Nobody knows about Iphicles, who is just a straight up mortal, right? So Hercules has a half brother that he's also twins with. He has this divine parentage, and his brother Iphicles is just kind of a mortal little baby, who we will come back to next week when we continue the story. Translation is tough. It's a lot tougher than filling out these boxes. It really requires you to put everything together. That's why we're going to practice. We're going to practice. We're going to practice. You will have some pretty simple sentences to work with on the quiz, and you will be given lots of vocabulary help to make sure that you are using the right shades of meaning of the words. Okay? So I'll be back tomorrow to do the synopses. All right? Excellent, guys. Thank you for coming. I really do appreciate it. And hopefully I'll see you tomorrow.